Welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast, where each week we're joined by leaders of Guaranteed Irish member businesses to chat about how they sustain jobs, communities and provenance. Supported by FBD Insurance, Ireland's largest homegrown insurer. Support, it's what we do.
Hello and welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast. My name is Bríd O'Connell and joining me today for a special episode of the podcast is Hugh Wallace, award-winning architect, founding partner of Douglas Wallace Consultants and host of the upcoming Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum, to discuss government obstacles in public transport, Dublin's architectural problems and many, many more. Hugh, you are very welcome.
A very good day to you, Bríd.
Delighted to have you here in person in the offices of Guaranteed Irish in the middle of Dublin on a wet early week in September. But we're talking all things construction this month and we're delighted you're going to host our event coming up for us. For not that anybody doesn't know you, but give us a little bit of your own background and how you came into the world of architecture.
Well, funny enough, from about the age of 5, I knew I was going to be an architect.
Really?
Yeah.
Such vision.
Yeah. And I just kept with that vision, got into Bolton Street by hook and by crook.
Good.
Became an architect and had set up Douglas Wallace Architects by the time I was in 5th year.
Get off.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you couldn't do that today.
No, but great to see that level of drive and vision and contentment that you've never wanted to change.
No, I just love it. And I'm very lucky because I'm dyslexic. I have a high level of spatial awareness, which sort of compensates for my dyslexia.
That's right, yeah.
And I think that, funny enough, is a great asset for creative people to be dyslexic, because if you like, you use the other side of your brain.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? There's definitely a road for everybody and so much more emphasis and awareness of that now.
Correct.
But going to school in your day, I would imagine, that was probably a bit of a challenge.
Oh, you were just thick. So you had to write the line 100 times.
Ridiculous.
Well, that's what, nobody knew what it was. You were just thick.
Anyway, that didn't affect your confidence, clearly, because you bring so much colour and fun to your architectural practice, but also when we see you on TV and across radio stations. This is another side that has developed over the last, I suppose, more recent years.
Correct, yeah. I'm very much a half glass full. And so I do get slightly irritated with people who are half glass empty.
Yes, I agree with you completely. And its opportunity comes but once. You must take it.
Oh, grab it. And also do things you're not comfortable with in a safe environment. But push the boat out. If you fail, you fail. Pick yourself up and get on with it again.
Oh, good advice. Now, Hugh, I want to talk to you. In particular, I suppose, I've come to know you through the TV screens before this. And you always bring colour and fun, and that attitude comes through. Give it a go and see what happens. But isn't it very disappointing when you look across Dublin and particularly across Ireland, the level of architectural interest has been so bland across Ireland? We're not brave when it comes to that, or are we? Am I doing the industry a disservice by saying that there's so much room for so much more innovation out there, isn't there?
Oh, there's huge room. And I think that, what people miss is buildings talking to us. So when you go down towns or villages and there's this ripple and ribbon and sort of, I describe it literally as a rainbow of colour and shapes and sizes and everything, that our brain loves confusion because it actually is put to a test to sort it out. Not that you think about it, but it's at the back of your head and it puts a smile on your face and you're enjoying walking down the street. And we all enjoy really a good rummage.
Yes, yeah.
But unfortunately in modern buildings, there's nothing to rummage. It's presented to you. It's usually quite stern. It's got vertical emphasis, horizontal emphasis. But when it meets the ground, it doesn't talk to us. And there's so many examples of that. So I'd recommend people walk up Clanbrassil Street, walk up Cork Street, walk up these areas that new buildings have been developed. And when they reach the ground, they no longer talk to us. They are these big sheets of glass with nothing behind them. Well, it comes back to chaos. So, at the ground floor, you need to introduce softer materials. So there needs to be timber, texture, a bit
Softer.
of a mess, planting. If you go up Charlemagne Street now, there's amazing architectural buildings, but when they reach the ground, they don't talk to us. In fact, you have to remember is when you're walking up a street, you see probably about a maximum of 21 feet.
So whose job is that? Is that the local authority planning department, or is that the architect, or is it the consumer who's choosing to live there and saying this isn't good enough?
No, it's the architect and the town planners. So you have town planners saying you can't put up canopies. When you walk down, I remember as a kid going down Grafton Street, and it was all canopies and two-way traffic, and the bus went down the street.
That, yes. Not that long ago, actually.
No, but I'm just saying that people want canopies. They want the fruit and veg on the street.
Yeah,
they want
engagement, I suppose.
Do you remember, what was the fishmongers beside Neary's pub?
I don't remember the name now.
Okay, there was a fishmongers beside, and when the roller shutter went up, the fish was on the street. And people want that engagement. And you see, we're also living in an environment that the weekly shop is gone. We now want fresh product. We want the fresh fish. We want the fresh vegetables. We want fabulous meat from the butcher. And we want the baker. And they all need to be on the street and, engaging with.
Where do you go with your health and safety issues then? There's so many other things that are pushing out.
Falling over an apple. Get out of it, you. No
well,
way.
No,
I'm slipping on a fish.
I'm
now
talking
come
about
out
the food.
of it.
I'm talking about
come
the
on
food.
now.
We're going to have to cut that bit down,
No,
definitely.
no, you have to leave that bit in. Don't mind her.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about buildings because we're all about construction this month.
Yeah.
And it's a hot topic at the moment, particularly in the line of refurbishing and retrofitting old buildings. Now, I live in an old house. You go to retrofit it. It doesn't qualify for anything, so you're left paying for it all yourself. You do because you want to do the right thing by the environment. It's a vicious circle. It's very hard to get it right. And the current building regulations requirements require such a level of refurbishment. It's almost off-putting. What's the solution, Hugh?
Well, you need derogations from building regulations, particularly in relation to Part M of the fire regulations, Part B in relation to fire. You need to be able to get a building up to a C rating.
Yes.
And that, to me, is totally acceptable for an existing building that requires refurbishment.
And is anybody talking about this within the RAI to government? Is there any conversation about that where acceptable levels are acceptable as opposed to going for zero heat loss, A rating? Some of it is just not achievable.
No, it isn't achievable. It's not recognised by the industry or by the professionals.
So when somebody who has an old house and has invested heavily in it, and there are many of those around this country, beautiful old gorgeous buildings, when they go to sell them in the next generation, what happens?
Well, they have difficulty because in fact I believe that over the next 20 years, 15 to 20 years, the onus will be on the householder to have the work completed before they'll be able to sell the house. Is my interpretation of the new European...
And is there any conversation being had with our government here in Ireland, and the UK must be the exact same, in terms of trying to provide an exception for that age of a building?
Yeah, but if you go to Italy or France or Spain or Austria...
Any of our European counterparts have far more beautiful buildings.
Well, no, but they also live in them. They live in them.
That's right.
They live over them.
Yeah.
But that's because those buildings were actually originally apartments anyway.
That's right.
The problem in Ireland is we haven't yet, as a society, got around the fact of living in a maisonette, a flat, or an apartment. And we have to do that. If we're to have genuine sustainability, we just have to get over ourselves. And there is not a conversation about the reality of what sustainability means in relation to our houses, where they are and where and how we're going to live.
And what do you think should happen?
Oh, I think any developments in greenfield sites of, dare I say it, chimney pots, which you can't have anymore, should be banned. All residential development should take place in our existing housing stock or within our existing towns, villages, cities and urban centres.
And do you believe there's enough capacity to manage that?
Oh, more than.
So you're saying all those over the shop property, how rooms should be used, revamped, etc.
There's 200,000 properties in this country. available today.
And is that are they habitable though?
No, but they are sustainable.
Right.
And we need to get our head around it.
And have we not looked at that?
We have, and they've given grants and they're all great and everything else. But that doesn't negate the fact that the regulations then trip you up.
Yes, the regulations at the pinch point.
Yeah,
but surely the conversation, now we've got as far as looking at the two-bed apartment you could have over the local greengrocers of 50 years ago. So you've got to that stage. Now we're looking at that seriously. We're putting in grants. Now surely the next conversation is going to move up. Let's make the regulations a little bit easier to achieve.
They just need to have different regulations.
Criteria.
That doesn't mean that the building isn't
one size fits
safe.
all doesn't work.
Correct. And
Okay.
that's what we have at the moment. One size is based on new builds. And you're shoving that into existing structures, and that's not feasible.
And what about the conversation then, Hugh, that goes on in every other European city except Ireland, where you don't actually have to own your property, but there are laws there that the rental is so good that you can rent for life and you're safe, you're not going to be turfed out. Why hasn't that conversation really taken hold in Ireland?
Because we don't understand. The government, nobody understands the system. So when I go to Austria, I move into my apartment, which will be a pension fund, will own the apartment. I'll start off maybe in a small 2-bed. When I have the kids, I'll move to a 3-bed. When they leave, I move back to a big 1-bed in the same area. But in Ireland, we can't do that. We're fixated.
What is stopping us? Is it the need to own property?
The need to own property, and also the kids want the moolah. No, honestly, do you think you're going to let mummy sell your inheritance? So that's a big problem.
So a mindset, this is going to take generations, clearly, Hugh.
No, we have to get on with it. And this is why I'm saying we need to have a true conversation about this. And we're not. It's sort of like the government are saying, oh, we'll build apartments. And apartments, there's regulation about minimum sizes. But apartments shouldn't be minimum sizes. They should be 100 square feet more. So you can actually live in them. The reason that Victorian England worked is because you had no private open space in your maisonette or house. What you had was a well-maintained park.
Yes.
That you looked out on.
Yes.
That you walked to.
And you used.
Yeah. So in Ireland, all our big developments no longer have public parks that are maintained. The councils think a big lump of grass that the lawnmower comes along is adequate. That is completely inadequate.
But you see, the other question then I'd have to ask, we are not a sitting and growing traditional population as we were maybe 30 years ago with a certain level of growth each year. But the explosion of our population has taken over so much, and rightly so. We have a social duty to look after those who need help from other countries, coming in need of our help. And many other countries gave us help at times back in our own history. How do we house those people in a fair and equitable manner that doesn't build resentment, it allows them to have and rebuild a life after very traumatic exit from their own country in many cases? How do we manage to get to that if we're talking about another million by 2033? How are we going to sustain that?
Well, you see, the issue I have is that our population growth we were informed of by the Central Statistics Office in 1995, and we were told that again in 2000, and nobody did anything. So it's sort of like we've arrived at this destination and point and got, oh, there's a million more people. How did that? There's going to be a million more people. So my question is, where are they going to live? So for me, Dublin is off kilter. So it's all developed to the west. It needs to develop to the east. Sandymount and Clontarf Bay need to be completely reclaimed, and they should be new 15-minute cities. And they should be balanced back in Dublin. Now, the horror of having that conversation, I'm sorry, this is in national interest. We have to build a wall across to stop Dublin flooding. This is the perfect opportunity to deliver housing and protect the city from flooding. But that conversation will never happen.
And has anyone even started that conversation other than us here on the Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast?
Well, I try it, but really you may as well stick your head in the sand. And Cork's going to flood. So why not put a big gate at the entrance to Cork? But instead we'll fluff it and we'll build walls around Cork City, but it won't actually stop the flooding.
And as part of that development, Hugh, and the 15-minute cities, which I'm a massive fan of, is there an opportunity to build up? Because there's always that argument of building out versus building up.
Oh, we have to build up.
And where are the stoppages on that? Because that's an easy fix.
Well, you see, this goes back to our planning system. So, in my opinion, we need a strategic body that is responsible for the overall delivery of housing and strategic infrastructure in the country, and that it's all-encompassing thinking. It isn't 26 counties, all their councillors having their opinion. It should be, this is a national body, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And if you like, the whole of Ireland should be an SDZ. And when the development plans are being done by the councils, that's when third parties can object.
And of course, SDZ is Strategic Development Zones for those listening.
Correct.
Now, in terms of that, that's your blue sky thinking, as they call it, Hugh. In terms of reality, when we're back down working with the construction members here through Guaranteed Irish, we're always looking at trying to get people to support local, support Irish, sustain those jobs, be sustainable, take the carbon miles out of it. And we're asking people out there when they're building a house, a school, a hospital, an extension, that they consider buying from an Irish producer or manufacturer within the construction industry so that they can play their role in reducing those carbon miles. In your opinion, is the standard and quality of the product made here in Ireland, can it go toe-to-toe with those made overseas? Are we good enough?
Oh, we're more than good enough. Like, we're at the cutting edge of amazing products, particularly in regard to insulation.
Yeah.
Amazing products in insulation, amazing products in breathable plasters, in being able to actually put on facades. Like, there's extraordinary products out there. You just, unfortunately, and they stand up both in technology but also in cost.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. So why aren't the Irish developers and builders buying them, and why aren't the architects specifying them as a first port of call as opposed to their international competitors?
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, in Ireland, we still have it's better from overseas.
What a shame.
It's disgraceful.
Yeah, so now I have to say that's one thing we're delighted to have Hugh Wallace working with us on, the Guaranteed Irish House.
Correct.
Where we're really going to be promoting and making people aware of. At the end of the day, it's their money and their choice. But we would like people to be really conscious and aware of the products and the, as you say, technology that's coming across. Great companies from Kingspan, CRH, you've got the likes of Glennon Brothers. So you've got great companies out there who are global success stories on their own, from Kingspan to Glennon Brothers from as timber sawmillers, leading actually in Europe on that front. So Kingspan leading in the world, CRH, you've got EcoCell, you've got the sustainable, breathable properties and companies out there. We really need to start putting more of a spotlight on what we have and what we're proud of, and are winning accolades overseas and are going unnoticed here. It's incredible, really, Hugh. Yeah,
but I also believe that the great thing about the manufacturers here, if you say, here's a hole in the market, they will invest R&D to provide that product. So there's huge opportunities in this country.
Okay, and it's not just about, I suppose, supplying what they currently supply, but as you said, the opportunity for new innovations coming through is going to be really strong going down the road. And we've an ideal panacea for them. We need houses, we need more developments, we need more buildings. So there's a great opportunity to build as many elements of the Guaranteed Irish House into your property now, more than there ever was.
Absolutely, but you've got amazing furniture suppliers and manufacturers in this country. You have amazing lighting manufacturers. You have Solace, whose R&D is amazing. So all of a sudden, I don't need a switch in the wall. I can just use my phone to turn the lights on and off. So there's amazing stuff going out there. And really Guaranteed Irish is about supporting those products, but also saying, pushing them in terms of the quality. So it's not like it's second quality, best. It most certainly is first in class.
Okay, well, that's great to hear it from a member of the RIAI. And of course, we work very closely with the RIAI in terms of getting that message through to specifiers out there. So, Hugh, you're going to be fronting the Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum, which is happening in the end of September. Now, you'll be talking to a lot of important people with a lot of opinions and a lot of reasons, I suppose, from government officials and ministers all the way down to producers and manufacturers out there in the construction industry who'll say all the reasons why they can't do it. What's your advice to them as to why they can do it and we can do it differently and better from the past?
I think there's a willingness now, which hasn't been there, for government to listen. And when I say government, I'm not talking about in Dublin. I'm talking about down the country in our councils. Yeah. And there's a genuine frustration in our councils due to understaffing, that in fact they have the appetite to make change and deliver, but they don't have the resources. And that to me is a key point. And there's a streamlining required of both planning and building control and all of that side of our business, because if you like, the construction industry is well capable of delivering, but in fact there are roadblocks before they can put the first block in the site.
It's interesting, the bottlenecks keep coming back to planning in lots of ways, don't they?
Well, it's planning and regulations, third-party objections, and the whole issue of going to court. And if you like, planning has now, in the past, was the council on board Planola, and that was an end to it. Now planning constitutes legal, board and planning. And so when you're making a planning application, you're actually thinking of how somebody can take a legal action to stop. In the past, planning applications were about the application itself and going to the board and you get your result. Today, legals are part of the planning process. And because of that, when you're making a planning application, you're trying to mitigate against people taking a challenge. And that to me has completely changed the planning process and put such huge doubt into the process that overseas investors are going, no, I'm not going to touch Ireland.
Which is a great shame for Ireland.
Huge.
So we have a lot of changes to make internally, get rid of the bottlenecks and make sure that we're, I suppose, open for business to further external investment as well as homegrown investment here. Well, Hugh Wallace, thank you very much for joining me. I think it'll be a very informative day when you host and MC the Construction Forum for Guaranteed Irish. Looking forward to that. I think there'll be plenty of controversy. Hugh Wallace, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
If you would like to attend our event, we will leave a registration link in the show notes. Thank you as always for listening, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening to this podcast today.
The Guaranteed Irish Business Podcast, sponsored by FBD Insurance, Ireland's largest homegrown insurer. Support. It's what we do.